What's going on, everybody? I've been seeing a lot of talk online lately about how people are thinking UFC 299 is just a lot better than UFC 300, and I disagree with that. I'm gonna tell you guys why, and I have these little images with the full cards on them, and I'm gonna go through it fight by fight. So first fight on 299 is Ion Cutelaba versus Felipe Lins. That's a good fight. That should be entertaining. I think it will end in a finish. And now let's look at the first fight on 300, you guys. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. These are two former champions. I mean, this fight is gonna be fireworks. Is like just like the fight on 299, except these two fighters have more name value and they're more exciting. And this fight has much higher stakes. Like if Figueiredo wins this fight, maybe we could see him in a title eliminator bout. Maybe we could see him in a fight that would be just before a title eliminator bout. If Cody Garbrandt wins, he's back in the top 10 for the first time in a while. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I like Figueiredo versus Garbrandt more. And now let's look. On 299, we got Wood versus Moroz. And then on 300, we've got Andrade versus Rodriguez. Now, Wood versus Moroz, like, I don't want to mince words or anything. It's just a horrible fight. I don't know. I mean, it's just not a good fight. But Andrade versus Rodriguez, I don't really get why this is on UFC 300. It makes no sense at all. Both of these ladies are Brazilian. You guys know what card happens after UFC 300? Yeah, it's UFC 301. You know where that is? Yeah, it's in Brazil. What the fuck were they doing? I don't know. But it's still going to be a fun fight. It should be fun. Jessica Andrade rarely has boring fights. Lately, that's been because she's been losing, but she is coming off a win against Mackenzie Dern. That was a very good performance. Because Mackenzie Dern, she's pretty good. She's like a solid, like, top 15, top 10 fighter in the division. So, that's a good fight. And, there are more fights on 299 than there are 300. So, Vergara versus Almabayev, nobody gives a rat's ass about this fight, really. So we'll move on to Despain versus Parisian and Green versus Miller. Now, I am more excited to see Robelis Despain make his debut than I am to see Bobby Green fight Jim Miller. Maybe some of you guys might think I'm crazy. I feel like a lot of people will probably agree with me because Despain is a monster, man. He's like one of the most physically gifted guys that's ever going to be in the UFC, but he's making his debut against Josh Parisian. Josh Parisian is one of the worst heavyweights on the roster. Like, I almost feel like he shouldn't have even taken this fight. It's like a death sentence. He's going to get put out cold. But, respect to him taking the fight, there's no way he's going to win. It doesn't matter if he's taken a couple more jiu-jitsu classes in Spain. It doesn't matter. Parisian is not going to win. And Green versus Miller is a really good fight. And I think that because that fight should be competitive and it's with two big names, Jim Miller's a legend. Bobby Green has been around for a long time. He's a solid fighter. I think that I like that fight more than the Despain fight, but that's only because Despain is fighting a can. Really. So let's move on to the next fight. So, like I said, there's less fights on 300 than 299, but I still don't think that makes 299 better because let's look. Munoz versus Phillips versus Holman Harrison. Now, I'm going to be upfront with you guys. I don't know a whole lot about Kayla Harrison. I haven't really seen her fight, but I know she was a gold medalist in Olympic judo. I watched some of her matches. I know she is good. I have a feeling she's going to miss weight because she's very big. And Holly Holm is just... Who really wants to watch Holly Holm fight on UFC 300? Honestly, they're just putting her on here because she knocked out Ronda Rousey, and, some people might know who she is. But I really don't think they should have put her on UFC 300. And I think in general, UFC 300, they did not do a good job of planning it. I think they could have made it a lot better. Like, there are some fights that really should have been on here. Like, I think they should have put maybe Cyril Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich on UFC 300. That would have been a great idea. I mean, I don't know why they didn't do that. But back to the topic of the video. Holm versus Harrison versus Munoz and Phillips. Kyler Phillips is an up-and-coming guy. He's looked good. He was suspended for a while for PED use. I don't know the full details of that. But, he's a good fighter. He's well-rounded. He's got cool striking. Pedro Munoz, he's been around for a long time. He's a solid, ranked guy. Very good fighter. So I'm excited to see if Kyler Phillips is going to be able to beat him. And I think that's just more exciting than Holm versus Harrison. But that might just be because I don't care about the women's divisions, really, especially bantamweight, man. Like, flyweight and strawweight are alright, but bantamweight is just... It's hard to watch sometimes. Now, I'm going to skip over Macy Barber and Katlyn Chookagian. That's an alright fight. Macy Barber, she's alright. But... we're going to go with Gamrot and Dos Anjos versus Yusuf and Lopez. What is the point of Gamrot versus Dos Anjos? I don't get it. I really don't get it. They could have made any other fight with Gamrot or Dos Anjos, but I don't know. Let me tell you what. I'm going to pull up the UFC rankings right now. Let's look at the rankings for lightweights. I really think that there are several other fights they could have made. Like, they could have made Gamrot versus Hooker. They could have made that. Let's see. Sorry, my phone is taking a little while to load. Alright. Here we are. Lightweight. So, Gamrot is ranked number 6. I mean, dude, they could have done Gamrot versus Hooker. Maybe they just don't put Gamrot on the card. Or maybe don't put Dos Anjos on the card. I don't know. But they could have done... I mean, I know Michael Chandler's out waiting for Conor McGregor, so there's no way he was ever going to be on 300. Especially not against Gamrot. But I just feel like it's a pointless fight. Whereas Yusuf and Lopez, it's like... we're going to really see if Diego Lopez is as good as we think he is. Because if he loses to Sadiq Yusuf, then he's definitely not as good as we think he is. If he beats Yusuf in devastating fashion, then, we might have our next guy at featherweight. With Gamrot and Dos Anjos, there's nothing for Gamrot to prove. I feel like everybody expects him to beat Dos Anjos, and, we already know he's pretty good. I don't think we need to see that fight. But we move on to Blades versus Almeida and Nickel versus Brundage. Blades versus Almeida is just a much better fight. Like 100 times better. Don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to see Bo Nickel fight. He's fighting Cody Brundage. I mean, Cody Brundage slammed a guy making his debut. He got the slam because I don't remember if he was in a triangle or an armbar, but the guy was not grabbing Brundage's leg, so he was able to just slam him. I mean, it was a guy making his debut. I think his name was Zach Reese or something like that. He looked alright. I watched some of his fights on the regional scene. He looked alright. I didn't expect him to beat Brundage, because Brundage he's one of the worst middleweights. Why is Nickel fighting him? They could have made Bo Nickel versus Albert Duraev. They could have made Bo Nickel versus Sharla Magomedov. They could have made any one of those fights. They didn't. So I gotta give it to UFC 299 on this one. Overall, 300's prelims are better, but we'll do a quick recap. So Kutalaba versus Lins versus Figueiredo and Garbrandt. Figueiredo and Garbrandt is better. Wood versus Moroz and Vergara versus Almabayev. I think Andrade versus Rodriguez is better than both of those fights. But Despain versus Parisian and Pereira versus Olajaychuk. I like Green versus Miller better than Despain versus Parisian, but I give the edge to Pereira versus Olajaychuk versus Green and Miller. I think that'll be a better fight. I do like that fight a lot more. But let's move on to Munoz versus Phillips versus Holman Harrison. We'd also include Macy Barber versus Caitlin Sermonara in there. I think UFC 299 has definitely got the edge on this one because both of these fights, Munoz and Phillips and Sermonara versus Barber, are just kind of better than Holman versus Harrison. I don't know about Macy Barber. I actually think Holman versus Harrison is a little better than Macy Barber, but Munoz versus Phillips is better. And then Blades versus Almeida and Nickel and Brundage. Blades versus Almeida is obviously better. And then Gamrot versus Dos Anjos and Yusuf versus Lopez. Yusuf Lopez is better. So I think the prelims are very close. You know, maybe we could give the edge to 299 because there's a couple more fights. But I think all the name value on UFC 300 just makes it a better card for the prelims, in my opinion. But we will move on to the main card. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be UFC 300's official main card. I think we're still waiting on one more fight. But let's see. Cater versus Sterling and Yan versus Yadong. Yan versus Yadong is a better fight. Come on. Obviously. I'm not disagreeing with that one. Yan versus Yadong is a great stylistic matchup. Both fantastic boxers. You know, Yan on a losing streak. We're going to see if he can make a comeback, see if he still belongs at the top. If he loses, then that means Yadong beat him. And then the only guys to really beat Yan are championship-level fighters. Like Aljo, Corey Sandhagen, and Merab. And O'Malley. O'Malley's the champion right now. Peter Yan's losses are not bad. He's losing to the best of the best. And if Yadong beats him, then we've got a new contender at bantamweight. If Yan wins, then he's back in the mix. So I definitely do like that better than Cater versus Sterling. So I give UFC 299 the edge on that one. Burns versus Jack Della and Prohaska versus Rakic. Now, I like Prohaska versus Rakic more, but that has potential to be a boring fight. And now, if you see my last video, you know I was talking up Yuri, most entertaining fighter in the UFC. I still think that, but Rakic is he's kind of boring. He's just boring. But I think Yuri having a fight with anybody kind of makes it a 50-50, and I think the stakes for that match are higher than Burns versus Della Maddalena, because depending on what happens in the main event, the winner of Prohaska and Rakic could be getting the next title shot after Magomed Ankalaev. So I do give the edge to Prohaska and Rakic. Now, Oliveira versus Sarukian is better than Holland versus Page, no question. Gaethje versus Holloway. I like Poirier and St. Denis better because I don't really like the BMF belt. I think it's a little bit corny. And I think that Max Holloway should have stayed at featherweight. I would really love to see him versus Ilya. And I think Gaethje should have already been next in line for the title shot. He's coming off 2 wins in a row. I think Gaethje versus Holloway is a little bit of a pointless fight, but I think it will be maybe fight of the year. And I think that Max Holloway has a better chance than people are giving him. I really could see him winning this matchup. Do I think he's going to win? No. I think he has a very good chance, though. But I do like Poirier and St. Denis better because I view this as like a changing of the guard matchup. I do think St. Denis is going to win. And I think if St. Denis beats Poirier, then he'll fight the loser of Oliveira versus Sarukian, and if he wins that one, he's got the next title shot. So it's possible that St. Denis is a future champion. I really don't see Holloway becoming a future champion. I don't think Gaethje will become champion. And Zhang versus Yan, like, who cares? Really. Zhang Weili, she's the best women's fighter on the roster by far. She's the most entertaining. But this fight doesn't need to happen on 300. You got two Chinese ladies, and you didn't put them in China. When has there ever been a Chinese champion versus a Chinese contender? Never. That's the answer. Never. There's never been that. Why is it not in China? Let me know, Dana. Let me know. Let me know, man. And now we go to the main events. O'Malley versus Vera versus Pereira and Hill. I like Pereira versus Hill better, guys. I think a lot of people will agree with me. I think it's a very intriguing matchup because Alex Pereira, he struggles with straight shots, and Jamal Hill's best punch is his two. Whether he's in southpaw and it's his left hand or orthodox and it's his right hand, his two is nasty. He might be the fastest light heavyweight when it comes to hand speed. He's got nasty kicks, and Pereira's leg kicks are devastating. We're going to have to see how Jamal deals with those. And I noticed, I've been watching Jamal Hill's fights back. When he pressures people, he drops his rear hand after he throws punches. Sometimes he doesn't bring it back to his shin. And I think that's where Pereira can really punish him, obviously with his left hook. And I think Hill is going to win. I do think Hill will win. But I'm going to be releasing a more in-depth breakdown of it later on. But I think it's just a much better matchup than O'Malley versus Vera. I think O'Malley versus Vera is going to be boring. I don't think Vera deserves the title shot. I think you should have either given it to Corey or Merab. I mean, Vera, he's a good fighter, but he's not championship material in my opinion, and it sucks because he's my favorite bantamweight. Maybe besides Corey, I can't really pick who I like more between those two. But Vera, I can't see him winning this matchup. I think O'Malley is going to really slow him down. He's going to be chewing up his legs, popping him with jabs. I'm not going to be surprised if O'Malley just starts shooting a couple takedowns just because he can. And I think O'Malley's feints are going to make Vera freeze up even more than normal, make him hesitate to open up. Even though he doesn't really have a whole lot to be worried about because his chin is made of iron. But I do think it'll be a little bit of a boring fight. And I just think Pereira versus Hill is a better matchup. So overall, UFC 300 definitely has the better main card, I think. But the prelims, I do think UFC 300 is better everywhere. But the prelims are closer. But I don't really get the backlash for UFC 300. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand a little bit of backlash. But I don't understand as much as there was. Like back when we didn't know the main event, and we figured out that Holm versus Harrison and Andrade versus Rodriguez were going to be on the card, I get it. But the card is looking fantastic now. There's probably going to be one more fight. So I think some of you guys need to just chill out a little bit and just sit back and enjoy the fact that we're getting 2 stacked pay-per-view cards back-to-back. Some of the best cards ever. And maybe they set our expectations a little too high, but I still think they delivered a great card for 300. 299 is an amazing card for a regular pay-per-view, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying 299 is bad, but 300 is just better, man. Come on. If you just look at it, the name value, let's see, how many fights with 300 are with champions or former champions? So Pereira versus Hill. Former champ versus champ. Former champ versus double champ. really Pereira, he's got belts in 2 different weight classes. Zhang versus Yan, title fight, whatever. Gaethje versus Holloway. Gaethje, former interim champion. Holloway, featherweight champion. Not featherweight champion right now, former featherweight champion, you know what I mean. Oliveira versus Sarukian. Sarukian is this next up-and-coming guy. People think he might be the guy to beat Makhachev. I disagree. I don't agree at all, but it's still a great fight. Oliveira, former champion, one of the greatest lightweights of all time. Prohaska versus Rakic. Yuri, former champion. Rakic, he's a light heavyweight fighter in the UFC. That's for sure. But no, all jokes aside, Rakic is a very good fighter. I could see him maybe become a champion one day. But Prohaska, obviously former champion, it's going to be a great fight. It's Yuri. Unless Rakic manages to stink it up, which if he does, that's going to suck. But I still think that's a fantastic fight. Now, Kattar versus Sterling. Sterling, former champion. People don't like Sterling because of his title reign. It was a little bit fluky. Some of the wins were a little bit crappy, like the win over Dillashaw. But nonetheless, Sterling, still former bantamweight champion. He tied the record for title defenses. He beat Corey Sandhagen in like 1 minute. He beat Yan one time. He lost to Yan the other time. It was a DQ. Whatever. The knee rule is stupid. But nonetheless, Sterling, great champion. Great fighter. Calvin Kattar coming back after a big injury. I'm excited to see that one. But yeah, it's... And Figueiredo versus Garbrandt, former champ. Like, come on. This is a fantastic card. And I think people should just sit back and just kind of enjoy it. Because 300 is probably going to be the best card we're going to get for the year. So, yeah, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. I understand if you think 299 is better. But I just don't think you can call 300 bad. I don't agree with that. And, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe. If you did not enjoy the video, let me know why, because I do want to make my videos better. So, yeah, I'll see you guys later.